Hey Scrabble fans, Will here. In some of my other videos, I talk a lot about bingos, which are like the home runs of Scrabble. A bingo is when you play all 7 of your letters and receive an extra 50 bonus points. A lot of newcomers to Scrabble are daunted by the prospect of learning to find bingos. If you're in that group, this video is for you. I'm here to tell you that you're better at finding bingos than you think, and I have proof. In 2003, a meme consisting of jumbled text began to circulate around the internet. I still run into it every so often. Pause the video for a moment and see what you come up with. Hopefully, you were able to read and make sense of the meme. If you surprised yourself with how easily you could read it, that's because, as I said, you're better at anagramming than you think. Still, there are some claims being made in this meme that warrant closer examination. First of all, while this topic, jokingly referred to as typoglycemia, has been researched before in academic settings, it wasn't by scientists at Cambridge University. I'm sure whatever trickster first made this meme did that to make it sound smarter. But what we're really here to discuss is this. Is it true or false that you only need the first and last letter in the right place to unscramble a word in a game of Scrabble? The answer is somewhere in between. It's false that you only need the first and last letter in place to unscramble a word. The transpositions made in the meme were deliberately chosen to preserve the sound of the original words in most cases. Other transpositions are much more difficult to anagram, even though the scrambled words may still keep the correct first and last letters. But it is true that the first and last letters of a word are the most important letters to have in place when unscrambling it. One study that analyzed reading speed for transposed text found that we lose the least reading speed by far when only interior letters are transposed, as opposed to the last letter and especially the first letter as well. For Scrabble purposes, if you can get the first and last letters of that bingo lurking in your rack in the right place, you aren't automatically guaranteed to find it, but it's a great first step. Okay, so now that we understand the importance of knowing the first and last letters of a word when unscrambling it, it's time to familiarize ourselves with which letters are likely to be the first and last letters in 7- and 8-letter words. A basic understanding of each letter's tendencies will help you a ton as you learn to spot bingos. This graph shows the percentage of all 7- and 8-letter words that begin with each letter. It's a fairly even distribution across the alphabet, with only one letter, the S, accounting for more than a 10% share, and only 4 letters coming in under 1%. There are a handful of letters that exhibit a very strong tendency to be the first letter in the bingos in which they appear. However, for the most part, these letters just don't appear in that many 7- and 8-letter words. But take a look at the percentages of 7- and 8-letter words that end with each letter. The S is light years past every other letter at a whopping 34.44%. That means literally over 1/3 of all 7- and 8-letter words end in S. This makes sense since the S can so frequently be tacked on to nouns and verbs to pluralize them. Anytime you draw an S, you should move it to the end of your rack and see what's left over. But remember, the S is also the most frequent starting letter as well, so give it a try in front of your rack too. Not only that, a whopping 12 letters fall under the 1% threshold. These letters are all extremely rarely seen as the final letter of a word. When you're looking for bingos and trying to determine what the last letter of your bingo might be, you can almost always safely disregard these letters. The lesson here is to really hone in closely on the letters of your rack that are most likely to end your bingo, and be slightly more open-minded with which letters could be the first letter in your bingo. Now that you have a better sense of the letters that are likeliest to start and end your potential bingos, you can try to get even more letters to fall into place using a good understanding of suffixes. Prefixes can work this way too, but several common suffixes are especially powerful to understand as you work your way up to finding bingos. Let's return to our graph of the most frequent ending letters as our guide, focusing on the letters with over a 5% share of all 7 and 8 letter words. Take the D, for example. The D is the last letter in 8,236 7 and 8 letter words, the third most frequent ending letter. Of that subset of words, a whopping 6,654 end in ED, the common verb form. That's 80% of all words ending in D. Therefore, if you have an E and a D together, you'd be well served to place those two letters at the end of your potential word and see what else you have left over. The R follows a distinct pattern as well. Of the 5,646 bingos ending in R, 4,774 end in ER. That's 84%. Within that group, 1,579 end in IER, the suffix for comparative adjectives. The G is even more extreme. Of the 5,370 7 and 8 letter words ending in G, 5,075 of them end in ING, an incredible 94%. If you have the G without the I and N to go with it, you shouldn't waste that much time looking for words ending in G. But if you have ING together, get into the habit of placing those letters at the end of your rack and working with your leftover letters to find potential bingos. Next, the T. 4,513 7 and 8 letter words end in T. Of those, 1,969 end in ST and 657 end in NT. Together, that's 58% of all words ending in T. Of the nearly 2,000 words ending in ST, 1,430 of those end in EST and 889 in IEST. If you can assemble 4 letters at the end of your potential word as a suffix, you've gone a really long way to forming your bingo right there. Of the 4,038 bingos ending in Y, 1,493 end in LY, 749 end in RY, and 397 end in TY. Those 3 suffixes comprise a 65% share of all bingos ending in Y. Lastly, the S and E are more flexible than the other letters on this list. While they each have a variety of suffixes to choose from, none of those suffixes dominate the way ED does for the D, for example. The S pairs well with some of the suffixes we've already discussed, such as ING and ER. The ERS suffix is particularly powerful, with almost 3,000 bingos ending in those letters. Understanding which letters work well as part of suffixes will get you even closer to the goal of finding bingos regularly. Let's see how the lessons we've learned look in practice. Say you draw these letters out of the bag. Where would you start trying to build a bingo? Remember what we said about the ED suffix? Let's move those letters into place and see what's left over. Next, let's recall what we've learned about the F. It's a letter that frequently occupies the first letter in words where it appears. What happens if we move the F into the first position? Voila! That's all we had to do to spot our bingo of fainted. Bonus points if you also found defiant in the same letters. Now let's try another rack. Here we have an S to work with. Can you spot anything with the S as the first or last letter? Maybe not. Let's try another suffix. How about IEST? Once we try the remaining 3 letters as our first letter of our word, wiriest should appear relatively quickly. Here's another group of letters. It looks like the best suffix in this set of letters is the ING combination. Once we put that into place, we only have 4 other letters to work with. Do you see anything? Yup, this bingo is cooking. Here's another one. Lots of suffixes to choose from here. Let's try ing again. Do we see anything? How about with ed? Or maybe with er? Actually, there isn't a 7-letter word in these letters. In fact, most of the time, you won't have a bingo on your rack to find, sometimes even when you have great suffixes available. But now you know some of the basic strategies to use to find bingos when you have them. And hopefully, you have a better appreciation of your innate ability to unscramble words from jumbled letters, one of the most important skills in the game of Scrabble.